Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Really excited about having Phillip K. Howard on the program again. He was back in the fall. I think back in October we had him on the program, and delighted to see him back again. Very bright, very informative, and brings some important insight into what's going on in the larger economy and really how our continuous national Band-Aid approach is really destroying the foundation of the economy and the government itself. It's really startling. I got a few days ago a copy of his new book about to come out called The Rule of Nobody, Saving America from Dead Laws and Broken Government. I plowed through it rather quickly because I've been very impressed by his work and really wanted to be as prepared as I could for the show. But fortunately, I'm the one giving the test and not you, Phillip, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, nice to be with you again.
Yeah, always glad to have you on. So tell us a little bit about your background and your story before we get into the book.
Well, I'm a lawyer, I'm afraid to say, but I grew up in eastern Kentucky, and I have always been involved in policy. When I was a teenager, I worked at the Oak Ridge National Lab. I was the sort of gopher for a Nobel Prize winner. And so I've been involved in policy issues really my whole life, and the last 20 years I've really been focusing on our dysfunctional system of government, and I think the conclusions are pretty clear. We're going to have to we're really going to have to reorganize it and rewrite it.
We're going to have to literally rewrite the Constitution.
It's paralyzed.
Is that what you're saying, Phillip? We're going to have to rewrite the Constitution at some point?
Well, I think there are a couple of constitutional problems, but I think the Constitution is fundamentally sound. What's not sound is that we have an approach to governing that tries to dictate exactly how to do everything. So there's 1,000 rules for nursing homes, and principals have volumes of rules about how to run a school. And people spend so much time with their noses in the rule books that they can't actually do their jobs.
Right, and they're spending their time mitigating rather than creating.
Yes, that's right. And they're always trying to comply all the time instead of getting anything done. Well, nothing in the history of the world ever got accomplished because somebody followed a rule. It only gets accomplished because somebody rolls up their sleeves and figures out how to make something happen. And life's sufficiently complicated that always requires fresh choices. And that occurs really at every level of society, whether it's whether it's somebody running a business or a teacher in a classroom, or it's Congress or the president. And so, for example, just to go to Congress, I was just down there yesterday. Congress doesn't have the idea that it's in charge of old law. So all these laws get passed over the last, particularly since the New Deal, like 80 years, and nobody ever goes back and cleans them out. So we've got 82 separate teacher training programs. We've got farm subsidies from the New Deal, labor subsidies that cost tens of billions of dollars every year from the New Deal. We have special ed. I've got someone who helps me understand this, who's a prominent lawyer in Houston, who's a special ed lawyer. Special ed now consumes over 25% of the total K-12 budget in this country. Mm-hmm. Well, there's no money or almost no money for early education or gifted children. Is that the right balance?
Yeah.
Nobody's even asking the question.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that, my understanding, there's things like T-testing commissions that were in the early years of the Republic that still exist today. And it seems to me that so much of this that you're talking about makes an articulate case for what the founders originally intended, which was a very small federal government and a rather vast state governments. What I mean by that is that, not vast in terms of totalitarian or anything like that, but that's where the majority of power would be, because A, it would be closest to the people, and B, it would be more competitive. States would have to be careful about what they did because they can lose their population to other states.
Yeah, that's right. And so, for example, whenever something can be done at a local level or state level, regulated or done, it should be done there. There are certain things that are, I think, unavoidably national, like, planning an interstate highway system or new power lines or whatever. And those things actually, in my view, should be taken away from states and just given to one decision maker in the federal government so we can get the stuff built. Right now, it's all paralyzed. No one can do anything.
It's multiple layers.
It's the worst of both worlds. It's like oatmeal or something. Nobody can decide anything.
Yeah, it's just all these multiple layers, and therefore nothing can be decided. What about states like Texas has, Sunset Commission, where every 2 years laws will expire unless renewed? That seems like a very common sense. I love it for a couple of reasons. Besides the fact that it gets rid of all the contradictory laws, or at least mitigates a lot of the contradictory laws, it creates an opportunity cost in time spent creating laws, because they have to reevaluate laws they've already created, which I love that. It's not like we get better for more laws. Yeah, it's very important.
And Texas is one of really two states where that works. And so Texas has been a leader in legal reform and government reform in some respects, and that's one of them. I actually think one of the changes I would make to the Constitution is that I would make a sunset provision constitutional, because otherwise people in Congress don't have the same culture of responsibility that they do in Texas, and they'll just, reenact all the laws after they sunset. So you've got to, I think, put a constitutional imperative that any law with budgetary impact has to expire periodically, and it cannot be reenacted until there's been an independent study by an independent commission that the public can debate it and such, because we've got, let's say it, Brent, there's no federal program that isn't broken. The question is whether it's broken 25% or 95%.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of them needs to get fixed. And we don't even have Congress. Literally, Congress doesn't have the idea that they're in charge of all these old laws. I mean, and it's a human nature to avoid responsibility. Well, Congress has really perfected that. So who's running the country? It's really being run by dead people. It's being run by whoever wrote all those old laws and regulations. They're no longer there. Nobody goes and fixes them. and
it's being managed, and they're being managed by unelected bureaucrats who, come and go over time, but have absolutely no accountability.
That's absolutely right, and the president can't fire them because Congress passed laws. The so-called merit system, civil service system, is really the anti-merit system. No one can ever be dismissed.
The civil service system is one of the major causes for how massive government is today. I much preferred a more crony system where people were automatically fired when a new administration came in. Much higher accountability.
There's an argument there.
Let's face it, these politicians only know so many people.
Yes, that's right.
If you look at the history of the civil service system, you can also see the history of the explosion of the number of people who work for government.
That's absolutely right, and one of the real problems with government, the slightly more subtle, is that as government's gotten bigger, each part of government considers itself a kind of independent government, right? So if you want to have a kind of one-stop shop for example, infrastructure approvals, you can't do it because not one of the 10 relevant government agencies wants to give up its power. Those bureaucrats think that they should have kind of a veto power over everything. And so nothing ever, even the President of the United States doesn't have the authority to stimulate the economy by building infrastructure, because you've got all these lifers who are, basically digging their heels in.
Absolutely. I tell you, it's terrible. The Rule of Nobody. It's a new book by Phillip K. Howard that I strongly encourage you to get your hands on. Saving America from Dead Laws and Broken Government. Phillip, as always, thanks for your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah. Thanks for nice talking with you, Kevin.
You bet. Look forward to getting you back on in the future. Make sure you check that out. You can find it online. You can order it online. Just put in The Rule of Nobody. It comes up very prominently. And it's a very fast read, very thorough content. All right. When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here can be found over there at usdailyreview.com.